Hello, leaders, and welcome to another episode of the 321 Leadership Podcast with me, Pastor Jeff. It is my joy and honor to be able to invest in your leadership. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak into your life during this precious time we have together. And thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, all the fun things you're doing. It helps me so much. Please do that if you haven't already. Our goal in this podcast is to find the current ceiling of our leadership by growing a little bit at a time, break through that ceiling, and find whole new worlds of leadership to live in and explore, and just keep on going and 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 going. And this month, what I'm going to do is give you a special 2-part episode with the original episode and then the bonus episode. I took last month off because of Easter to give myself a little margin and to give the leaders that are going to follow this content some margin as well. I know so many of us had other responsibilities during the amazing Easter season. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of my favorite leadership topics right now. It's funny, it's my favorite, but it is also, if I can be honest with you, it is also one of the most absolutely most difficult leadership lessons to get people to embrace. Let me say that one more time. I love this content, but it is some of the most difficult content to get people to embrace as leaders. It is the topic of over-communication. I know sometimes I will talk to leaders about having a good over-communication practice, and I'll get a lot of this, but then I'll get a lot of unintentional, I think, disagreement. It's just hard to embrace. And I'm going to shatter some of your perceptions on this topic to make it easier to embrace. I don't know if I've ever given this clear of a teaching to anybody before, so I hope this transforms your life and your leadership, and I really, really believe it will. So what we're going to do in part 1, we're going to talk about what it is, what it's not, some of the hiccups and hangups that keep people from embracing it. And then episode 2 is going to almost feel like a workshop. We're literally going to do, I think it's a 4-step exercise to build what I'm calling a proactive over-communication strategy. That's just one piece of over-communicating. We'll do other episodes of this on this topic down the line. But so today we're just going to talk about what it is, what it's not. And then next episode, we're going to talk about just like not even talking about, we're going to just do activities, do exercises to get good at doing this. And so without any further ado, let me introduce you to over-communication strategies, what it is, what it's not. And I believe this will impact your leadership if you lead 50, if you lead 5, if you're just leading your family, if you're just leading yourself. I promise you this will help you if you meet me in the middle and try to explore this. So let's start with a working definition of over-communication. Over-communication is the intentional, structured repetition of what matters most. One more time. The intentional, structured repetition of what matters most. Let's repeat this. Over-communication is the intentional, structured repetition of what matters most. And then here's part 2 of the definition. Spoken clearly, consistently, and contextually until your whole team not only understands it, but owns it. Mind and heart. Heart and mind. Let's put all that together. Over-communication is the intentional, structured repetition of what matters most, spoken clearly, consistently, and contextually until your whole team not only understands it, but owns it, both mind and heart. So over-communication is not about being loud. It's not about repeating everything. What is it about? It's about creating clarity that sticks on purpose. What do we know about leadership? Most leaders don't struggle to speak, but many leaders struggle to repeat what needs to be remembered. And I think the best leaders in the world, this is my observation, the ones that create movements, not just single moments, they build over-communication into their rhythms of leadership, and they don't apologize for it. Some experts that have really helped me understand this in a way that's honestly changed my life. Patrick Lencioni, his content on leadership is just out of this world. You could pick up any book of his and be blessed and grow as a leader. He says this. He says that if you haven't said something at least 7 times, your team probably hasn't truly heard it. And he has this phrase I really like. He calls leaders chief reminding officers. If you've been part of my leadership team, you know that we borrow from the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast the phrase CPS, you're a Chief Problem Solver. You can add that title to your name. If you're a leader on our team, you're a CPS, Chief Problem Solver. I almost want to add this second credential, the Chief Reminding Officer from Lencioni. Just Google that. You'll have a fun time getting content from him on that. It's really, really, really helpful content. Craig Rochelle puts it this way, in some way or another. He says something along the lines of, when you're sick of saying it, your team is probably hearing it clearly for the first time. And so what feels redundant for you might be just enough for them to finally catch it. Andy Stanley has some great organizational content, and this one quote of his just really, really sticks. He says, if it's worth saying once, it's worth saying 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. And so all three of these leaders would, and many others of their contemporaries would agree that vision leaks, clarity fades, and your team, right? This is what we know about your team. Your team, staff, your team, your volunteers, whoever they are, your team wants to do a good job. We've talked about this in past episodes. They want to do a good job. But they are living in a world that's full of noise. It's full of distractions. It's full of discouragement. And even we could go spiritual with this. There's spiritual warfare. And so when you repeat something for your team, you need to understand this. You're not necessarily annoying them. You're what we would say anchoring them. You're loving them. You're showing them kindness. And so you're giving them something to hold on to in the chaos of their leadership with all the other things fighting for their attention. And so what this looks like practically, if you're leading your team and you feel like you've said the vision for your team 12 times, say it a 13th time. But here's something really important. On the 13th time you say it, do not say it like it's the 13th time. On the 13th time that you tell your team the beautiful, wonderful thing that they need to know from you, say it like it's the first time, because for them it might feel like the first time. So over-communication is not leadership insecurity. It's actually leadership maturity. Let me say that again. Over-communicating is not a sign of leadership insecurity. It's a sign of leadership maturity. Okay, and so we want to do this. We want to be over-communicating leaders. Over-communicating leaders. And what I want to do is I'm going to teach you two things that it's not, that I think a lot of people kind of go into. And I want to acknowledge I'm working through a barrier here. So I'm going to over-communicate maybe more than necessary for a good podcast. Because like I said, many leaders I work with, they hear this lesson and then they quietly disagree or struggle to embrace it. So I want to overcome this obstacle by over-teaching. Let's just agree on this one thing at this point. At this one point, let's just agree on this one thing. Great leaders don't just say the right things. They say the right things often until others can say them too. Or you don't just want to say the same thing. You want your team to know the right things that you're teaching them as well. And so super clarity. I'm sorry if this is over clear. No, I'm not, because we're going to over communicate to make sure these principles drive home into not just our minds, but our hearts. And so here's where I'm going to tell you why I'm telling you what it's not. Because I think what some people hear when I say over communicate is you're like, oh no, he's telling me I need to grow up. I need to blow up my group chat, and I need to send 5 more emails, and I need to repeat every update until my team blocks my number. So let me stop you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about effective over communication that blesses your team and lands right because it's done well. I'm going to teach you how to do this well. So number one, here's clarification number one. Over communication doesn't mean saying everything to everyone all the time. Okay? This is the trap of over explaining or oversharing, right? Sometimes in leadership, we strategically overshare, but oversharing is different than over communication. And so I'm not saying have an oversharing policy. Right? What you need to know firsthand is different than what other people need to know firsthand. Not everybody needs to know everything all the time. I'm learning how to do this much more effectively now. I apologize to my team. I'm learning how to do this much more effectively. I realize I'm being really honest with you, and maybe I'm oversharing rather than over communicating at this point. But what I've realized is my role in my leadership team has just scaled so quickly as our organization has grown, that I actually need to readdress everything I'm sharing in this part of the podcast with every leader that serves as a direct report to me. And so here's something I'm going to show you, and I'm going to start probably going through our leadership team and clarifying a lot of these with them. There's 3 tiers of leadership communication. And this goes into, I'm still giving you that clarifying point. Over communication doesn't mean telling everything to everybody. I'm kind of going into sub points on this to make sure I'm not losing you, to over communicate a little bit. You have 3 tiers of communication. Some people you work with are collaborators. So they're usually a direct report, and their role works directly with your role, right? Like the things you do impact one another. And so you have collaborators, and they need to know what to collaborate on and how often. So you're going to communicate a lot with people you collaborate with, and you need to have clarity on your collaboration expectations. Then there's other people that maybe their role doesn't impact yours so directly. Maybe it's a little more indirect, but they would be what you call loopers. You have collaborators, then you have loopers. Maybe they lead their own area. Maybe they have more responsibility or more autonomy. And at the same time, you just need informed. You need to know what they're doing, how often they're doing it. I have several direct reports in my organization that I don't need to babysit them, but it is really helpful for me to just generally know what's going on. And then from the loopers, they need a pattern of looping you in or you looping them in. And so like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's why. And then there's others that are just the rock and rollers. So you have collaborators, loopers, you have rock and rollers. They can stay in their lane. They can just keep rocking and rolling. They can keep going and growing and flowing. They embody the values, and there's probably still some loop you in cadence between you and them, but it's less intense and less frequent, but it's still there. They're mostly rock and rollers, and there's maybe they loop you in on a few things, but most of the stuff, honestly, you just don't need to know. But what I want you to see is you do have different people who communicate differently. And you as the leader need to over communicate what you expect from each person. Hey, here's your role. Here's my role. Here's how we collaborate. Here's your role. Here's my role. Here's how we loop. Here's your role. Here's my role. Here's how we rock and roll. And so we want to bring that level of clarity to our leadership. And so what I'm showing you is this doesn't mean sharing everything with everybody. The 3 tiers, I hope, establishes there's different things that different people share with you, and you share with them in different ways. You just have to figure out what those are. There's a lot of work that needs done to do this well, which we'll talk about again in the next episode. But let me give you the second clarification. Over communication doesn't mean spamming your team. Let me one more time. Over communication does not mean spamming your team. Over communication is a structured rhythm. Okay? Over communication is a structured rhythm. It's a structured pattern that strategically shares the right information in the way that your team needs in order to be led well, that your direct report needs in order to be led well. And so think calm and clear, not clutter. Okay, that could kind of help. Over communication, here's a line I wrote for you that might help you. Great over communication feels more like a heartbeat than an alarm. Okay, a heartbeat, which would be steady and predictable and life-giving. An alarm is just jarring and panic-inducing. Wah, wah, wah. You probably just heard my phone go off because I forgot to put it on silent mode a minute ago. And it's like, there's an alarm going off. Something's going on. Okay. Great over communication is going to be predictable, not just like sporadic and anxiety-inducing. I'm really excited about part 2. I'm really, really excited about it. This exercise I've designed on how to build a whole proactive over-communication strategy. I'm really, really excited to share that with you. And some of the things we'll do is like, who should we talk to weekly? Who should we talk to monthly? Who should we talk to quarterly? Who is a looper? Who's a collaborator? And we're going to go through some really fun stuff with that. But for today, I just need you to hear that over-communication does not equal oversharing. It is about clarity. It's not about clutter. It's about consistency. It's not about chaos. It's about leadership. It's not about loudness. And so if you embrace that, you're going to lead better than you ever have before. And I would, if I were a betting man, or if you were paying me for this content, I would give you a money back guarantee that when you develop a proactive over communication strategy, I am willing to bet, I would offer a money back guarantee that your team will thank you. Your team, when you do this, if you're not doing it already, and good job if you're already doing this, but when you do this, your team is going to say, I feel so much more peace that your leadership is predictable. They're going to thank you. They're going to appreciate this because this is one of the things great leaders do. So if over communication is this effective, and if it builds trust and clarity and confidence and momentum and gratitude in your team, then why don't more leaders do it? Well, a couple of reasons. It's not laziness. And it's not carelessness. Deep down, I think there's a fear that keeps leaders from living this out. I think a lot of leaders say, I don't want to feel annoying. I don't want to sound redundant. I don't want people to think I'm controlling. And I get it. Some of you maybe thought they already know this. I don't want to insult their intelligence. If I say it again, they're going to roll their eyes. Or I don't want to come across like I don't trust them. But here's the truth. If you're afraid to repeat yourself, you're underestimating the noise that your team is living in. Let me just say that whole phrase one more time. If you're afraid to repeat yourself and over-communicate, you are underestimating the noise that your team is living in. And this next thing is going to be really humbling, but you are overestimating how memorable you were the first time. I know that's really humbling. Even as a preacher, I want to think that everybody remembers everything of every sermon, but the reality is I even preach sermons seconds and third times. If I find one that I really, really like, I'll re-preach it because I know not everybody's going to remember every truth. And so let me say it again. If you are afraid to repeat yourself, you are overestimating how memorable you were the first time. Let that settle in. You're not just competing with their inbox. You're competing with exhaustion, with distraction, pressure at work, family stress, spiritual warfare, the constant background noise in their life of what am I forgetting? And people aren't ignoring you. They're just overloaded. We are in the information age where people are just getting bombarded with so much information all the time. They just have a lot of noise, and so we want to give them the ultimate kindness of over-communicating. I wonder how many times I've said the word over-communicating in this podcast. Let me just kind of approach this from another direction, and then we're going to start landing the plane. One of the things I say in this podcast is I believe Jesus was and is the greatest leader of all time. And when we grow in our leadership, there's a chance we might actually find ourselves growing to be a little more like Jesus. You notice how God repeated himself and his covenants over and over again? He did that all throughout the Old Testament. You see him reaffirm his covenant with his people. And you actually saw Jesus would tell the same truth in different parables. In fact, one of the messages about Jesus was what? He traveled and consistently repeated the message. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. And so you actually see this as not a biblical command, but actually a biblical pattern of God. This I would call it God's over-communication strategy of his love and of his kindness and of his relationship with his people. Again, I'm working against this obstacle. A lot of people are like, I don't need a communication strategy. I'm just going to talk to my team. And at some point you have to really wrestle with what you're communicating when you say this. And some of you as leaders, what you might wrestle against is the idea that like, I said it once, I shouldn't have to say it a second time. Okay. And the reality is that's a prideful way of leading. And rather than having that prideful way of leading, I would like to lead you, if I may, into a humble leadership attitude that says, out of love for my team, I'm not going to just say it a second time. I'm going to say some of these things all the time because I love them. I love my team. I love leading, and I want to honor them with true over communicating. Here, let me show you one way I do this in my ministry. It's not the most relatable example, but I do it every week, and it's one of the most important things I think I do every week. Every Sunday at Restore, where I'm the pastor, we have something called the sending right before the service ends. Some churches, in a traditional sense, would call it the benediction. It's more than this closing prayer. It's kind of like a send off and a blessing for the congregation. And what I do is I use it as a moment to re-anchor the message, and I try to over communicate something that I know somebody could have misheard from the message, or misread or misapplied, or somebody with church hurt could have misunderstood in the worst way rather than the good way. And so I'll always go up to the pulpit one last time before the service closes, and I'll say, I want to make sure you heard the sermon I actually preached, not the one that enemy tried to whisper in your ear while I was preaching it. And then I'll revisit that key point that was weighty or challenging, or a kind truth that maybe could have hit a little too close to home for somebody. And then I'll say, I'll clarify, and then I'll say, you are sent. And I know that, like I said, that example might not be the most relatable thing to everybody listening, but I hope it gives you kind of a visual on like, oh yeah, I've felt that before. If you're part of my church, at least you're like, I've felt my pastor doing that before, and I can see now ways that having an over communication strategy could be a little more helpful. All right, so let's land the plane with this. We've talked about how over communication isn't just a nice add-on where you just talk a lot more. It's a core leadership practice and behavior that creates clarity, it builds trust, it empowers your team. And actually, I haven't said this yet, but it makes you a more organized leader as well. You are going to benefit probably from a over communication strategy more than anybody on your team. What is over communication? It's not loud, it's not chaotic, it's not spam. What is it? It is an intentional structure repetition of what matters most, spoken clearly, consistently, and contextually until your team doesn't just hear it, they carry it, mind, heart, and then let's add soul. So what is over communication? It is repetition with purpose. It is structured. It's not scattered. It's empowering, not overbearing. It is not saying everything to everybody. It is not spamming your inboxes or your chats. It's not micromanaging your team. It's a way to empower your team to follow your lead. What is leadership? It is taking people someplace you're already going, and over communicating is a way to make it easier to go to the difficult place that you're leading them to. Okay. And so what I want to do, we're going to do the workshop next week. But I want to give you just a little bit of challenge this week. Kind of start prepping yourself for the upcoming episode and the workshop by just saying like, what's a message that you want your team to know that you assume everybody knows? What are some of those messages that you assume your team already knows? Is there a scheduling thing? Is there a team philosophy? Is there a win? Is there a goal? Is there an expectation, a pattern of behavior? What are some of the things that you assume they know? And maybe even make a list. Like, what are those things that you assume they know or you want everything to know? Because that when you have that list done, that's going to make the workshop a lot easier on figuring out how to communicate these things. So next week we'll get really, really practical. I'm going to land the plane for there. It's going to feel like an abrupt ending because it really is to be continued. So thank you for tuning in to the 321 Leadership Podcast with me. I'm honored and delighted to be in this with you. I will see you next time. Peace.